no idea if we're live or not, but we're gonna record this as if we are.
Yeah, we might as well.
Um,
I don't we have any idea how many
I have
people
no
we have?
idea. I don't know if
If
we
it
have anybody here. I don't know if we're live or
well,
not.
we're 15
It
minutes
says
past our start time, so we may have
yeah,
no one
I don't know.
but
I think what we're gonna do is just behave as if we are live, and we're going to do a great webinar, and then we will make sure everybody gets a copy of it, and
yes, I think that's the
let's
plan.
just do this. Yeah, we are super excited to get to present about trust and money in families and having a focused conversation about one of the four domains of trust, which is sincerity and the use of transparency. So I am Emily Bouchard, and my co-author is with me here, Charles Feltman. We're so looking forward to having this conversation and providing you with some great tools to start using right away in terms of communication and deepening and building trust within your families or with the clients that you serve that have families.
So, why don't we
Let's
just
see. Should I
introduce
bring
ourselves?
Yeah, let's do that. Let me get my screen share here.
We're gonna show a couple slides here as we get going. Um,
There we go. So let's just
yeah,
introduce ourselves and a little bit about why we're talking about this topic.
yeah. So, as Emily said, my name is Charles Feltman. I am primarily an executive and leadership coach. I also work with teams, leadership teams. I wrote a book called The Thin Book of Trust about, well, when it was first published, the first edition was published in 2009. And the third edition came out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, actually, almost. So it's been around for a while. And in it, I aimed at building trust in organizations, on leadership teams and between people in organizations. And then some years ago, actually, I met this woman named Emily. We were both working together for
Mhm.
another group, and she got to, we got to learn a little bit about each other.
Mhm.
Then we kind of disconnected. We didn't once we left that group. Um, we didn't talk for a long, 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 long time. And then Emily, I think I posted something on LinkedIn, or Emily did, and I said something about, but anyway, she
Yeah.
mentioned using the Thin Book of
Mhm.
Trust in her work with families. And I was like, wow, that sounds interesting, because I, for many years, thought, oh, I'd love to write a book about this stuff, this framework, this model, this way to build trust and maintain it and repair it for families, but I didn't know how
Mhm.
to, I didn't have a good way in. So I DM'd Emily and said, "What the heck? How do you do that?" And she got back to me. Take it away, Emily.
Yeah, it was an amazing, great opportunity to get reconnected. And I've been using the concepts in the Thin Book of Trust with families and family businesses, gosh, since 2004 when I was working at the Williams Group. And that's when I first became familiar with these distinctions. And when I found out about Charles and the Thin Book of Trust, I was so thrilled because it's a great resource and it really explains them so well that anybody can understand them, that I would recommend it all the time and I would use it in my work. And so we had a great conversation about that. And as you can see, I co-authored two other books with other colleagues. And I said, hey, if you are interested in writing a book for families, I'd love to co-author it with you. And so we decided we'd start with an article and see how well we work together and collaborate together. And we wrote an article for the Family Firm Institute's practitioner. And it went so well, we thought, well, yeah, let's give it a try. And so now the Little Book of Trust and Money, an essential primer for families, is we just yesterday got the official, what is it? Is it galley? Like
Yeah,
it's
the
all ready to
proofs.
go. It's
Yeah.
going to the printer, which is pretty extraordinary. That it's been quite a journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about the trust, why this matters and why it's important to be aware of it, and then also how to break it down so you can really be effective in how you build it, maintain it, and repair it.
Am I doing this?
Yeah,
Okay,
this
I'm
is
talking
yours.
about I'm talking about this. Yeah,
Trust.
so you know, typically when I'll ask somebody or a group of people, how do you define trust? There will be something they'll say something like, "Oh, trust is keeping confidences," or "Trust is keeping your promises, delivering on something when you say you were, or being honest." So there are very specific behaviors associated in each person's mind with what trust means or being trustworthy means. And uh, what what really comes with that is that trust, when you use the word by itself, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Mhm.
And it's kind of ambiguous in that sense. Actually, it's not kind of, it's very ambiguous in that sense. I can have my own idea of what trust and trustworthiness is, and Emily will have a slightly different one, and any of you listening would each have something as well that's different. What we do to deal with that, to work with that, is to break trust down into 4 different, what we call assessment domains. So if I'm going to trust somebody, I'm going to make an assessment about how trustworthy they are. And if I'm only working with this ambiguous concept of trust, it's kind of hard to do that. But if I have some finer distinctions, it makes it easier, a lot easier. So the distinctions that we use are care, sincerity, reliability, and competence. I'll let Emily explain what each of those means in a minute. But one of the big things that this allows people to do, and I see it over and over again with my clients, is often trust. People think about trust as either you have it or you don't. Either I trust you 100% or I don't trust you at all, which makes it challenging in relationships, and particularly in family relationships. If you trust your son, your teenage son, I'll use that as an example, 100%, that means most likely you're probably going to have to turn a blind eye to certain behaviors. You won't have a good opportunity to talk about those behaviors necessarily, because you don't want to let your son know you don't trust them in that particular way or around that particular issue. Opposite side of that, you don't trust them at all. You're going to be constantly driving yourself crazy about what they're doing, what they're up to. So it's much better to recognize that you can actually trust somewhere on a continuum and be specific about where you trust and where you don't trust and why. So, Emily, you want to talk then a little bit about these 4
Sure.
different distinctions?
Yeah, and I'll say too, in terms of families, you work with and I work with a lot of couples, and that's a huge one. What you just described, like when we get married, there's this sense of I have to trust this person completely with everything, or if I question or I don't trust them in some domain, that means I don't trust them, and I have to trust them. So how do I move with it? And this makes it much easier to be able to bring up concerns in certain particular areas of life while still maintaining a really solid and firm foundation of trust where it matters in your marriage. But when things are happening that aren't necessarily trustworthy, you need to be able to address them and address them quickly as when they come up. And being able to have these distinctions can help with that. So let's dive into them a little bit more. And we're going to be spending a lot of time with sincerity today. And we're going to have different webinars for each of them to go into more depth. But basically, sincerity is the sense of being honest, and that there's this integrity with what you're thinking internally and what you're saying externally. And that feeling you get when you're like with someone and they say something and you're like, I don't know if I believe them. That's typically there's something out of alignment with what they're saying and what they're thinking. And it's the hardest one in a lot of ways to measure, because you have to kind of take their word for it, right? It's a our intuition might say, I don't know if you're being sincere about this, but we have to really take somebody at face value. So the more honest someone is, the more integrity they have, the more sincere they experienced, the more trust they're going to have in their lives. And the other side is also true, that if you break somebody's trust, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you come across as insincere, they're much less likely to trust you the next time you say something. It's a harder one to rebuild because, again, there's nothing like observable about it. It's something that's coming from inside. And then reliability is really, do you say what you're going to do? When do you do what you say when you say, and it's in the right timing? Do you fulfill your promises? Are you somebody I can really count on? If I know you're taking me to the airport, do I know you're going to be showing up at the right time to get me there, right? And reliability with money could be like, paying the taxes on time and making sure that everything's done to the degree it needs to be to have the taxes be filed. um, and when we look at competence, this is a really helpful one when somebody is in a role in a family that requires them to have some sort of understanding about the money that they're dealing with, and you can assess how competent they are. Like, you can really see, are they able to do what they say they're gonna do or what they promise to do? And you can build competencies, and that's a area where you can really build trust by declaring yourself incompetent. Like, "I'm ignorant in this area. I don't know the first thing about taxes." Well, great. How do you wanna learn? Like, what's the best way to get so you can get up to speed about this and also be able to assess the people that are doing the taxes for us to know that they're doing it competently. So, do you have the skill or do you need to build it? And then care, I like to think of it as like the domain that wraps around all the other ones, right? Where it's really about, are you looking out for each other? Do you have each other's backs? Do you have your best interest at heart? And in families, a lot of times there can be a sense of the parents having that sense of care about each of their kids. But when you start looking at estate planning or transitioning leadership to a sibling, or a cousin, there is that sense of, well, are they going to care about me and have my back the way that my parents supposed to? That's a very different role. It's the same role, but different people in that role that make you wonder, and how do you assess whether they care about you and that they're going to have your back? So those are the 4 domains, and we wanna talk about sincerity. And let me see how I can stop sharing this so that we can just have a conversation for a little bit. Um, there. Uh, so we wanted to talk a little bit about how sincerity and this idea of transparency plays out in families, and why this makes such a difference, and how you can use it to really support building trust in the family. So, Charles, did you want to start with the story you had?
Yeah, I'll start with a story where transparency or the lack of transparency actually posed a huge problem for a family. There's a family I worked with a few years ago. There was 3 siblings, a brother and 2 sisters, all fairly close in age. One of the sisters lived near their aging mother, who was not doing well. She had dementia and other issues, medical issues, and so the sister who lived near her was the one who took on all of the responsibility around that. And so there was an agreement with the other 2 siblings that she could use money from her mother's savings account to pay her back for some of the things that she uh, purchased for their mom, and the things that she did for their mom. So that was all fine. And at some point, it became apparent that her mom was not able to really take care of herself in her home anymore. She needed to go somewhere. They looked at homes near where the sister lived, and they just none of the siblings felt comfortable with that. So what they decided to do was, and this was proposed by the sister nearby, said, I have an extra room in my house. It's not really a room now, but it could be converted into a bedroom with a bath. We can take money out of mom's savings to do that. It'll be about, I don't know, $40,000. The other siblings agreed, recognizing, of course, that it was going to add value to the one sibling's house, property value. but they all agreed that was okay because they figured there was going to be a fair amount of time, 2, 3, 4 years of savings that otherwise would go to care facility. So that all went down. The only thing, however, was that the sister who lived by mom did not share a little bit of information that was kind of important, or she didn't think it was that important in her mind, but she was told by her mother's doctors that her mother would almost surely need to be moved into a skilled nursing facility within the year. So did some, significant amount of work to her house, got a new bedroom ready for mom, nice deal. Mom moved in, and then it did turn out to be just like 5 or 6 months. Mom, the sister couldn't take care of her anymore. She needed to go to a nursing facility. And the other siblings at that point, well, that's how it goes, until one of them found out about the information that she had not shared with them from the mother's doctor. And that was kind of blew up the family at that point. It was a good example of the sister nearby not being fully transparent, keeping something secret from the other siblings.
Yeah, I think
it's a real problem.
It's a real problem. And, you're talking about an issue that so many people are facing right now. And being able to navigate that well as siblings is so important. And leaving out that little piece of information, keeping that part secret, probably contributed greatly to the family blowing apart and not having the relationships that they had going into it. You want to speak a little bit about the difference between secrecy versus privacy? Because I think that that's a really important distinction for people to understand around, when and how to share information.
Yeah. Transparency is kind of on a continuum. At one end is full transparency. Everybody knows everything, and it's all clear and out on the table. At the other end is privacy, where there's something, maybe a lot of information that's kept private for a good reason. There may be many different good reasons in the family context. So there's this sense of where on that continuum do I need and want to land in order to keep things in the family healthy. There are times when you just don't. It's important not to share certain information with certain family members. Let's keep it private. When the time comes, we will share it when the time is right.
And I'll add there that using competence as a tool to assess when and how to share private information is a great way to have the family feel like, oh, that makes sense that not everybody's going to have the same information, because some people don't have the competence to handle the information, or they've already demonstrated that they will divulge information that needs to be kept private. Like, let's say you're in the middle of an M&A deal, and you have a sense of how much the business has been valued, and you're not going to share it with certain members of the family that might tell other people, or might put it on social media, or like, if they're not trustworthy with the information, you don't want to blow a deal because you've given too much information to somebody who's not reliable or competent in handling it. So again, you can use the distinctions around that so the family understands why certain people have access to information and other people don't. So please keep going. Yeah.
And the other distinction here, down at the end, privacy end of the continuum, is secrecy. And the story I just told is an example of secrecy, something being held secret. The sister who did not divulge that information didn't intend to divulge it. She was keeping it secret in order to benefit her. And that's usually a hallmark of someone keeping something secret. It's this information is going, keeping it secret is going to benefit me. It won't benefit anybody else. Whereas, as Emily just explained, keeping something private will benefit other members of the family in certain ways. Secrecy, it's all about me and what's going to benefit me. And that's why I'm keeping it secret.
Yeah. And a good litmus test is if you're not telling information check with yourself and say, okay, if somebody found out about this, would they be upset about it? And if that's the case, you really want to double check in terms of, is it worth the potential damage that could happen as a result of keeping it secret? And I mean, as we know, you can think that, oh, nobody's going to find out, but the people always do. So that's not a good idea. And I'm going to just share another story from the family business perspective, where I was working with a father and a son that were working very closely together in a closely held family business. And there were three daughters that were owners by, transitioning ownership to them. And they were given documents and information related to like taxes they had to pay, or what they needed to understand, but at a very minimal level as owners. And the father and son kept telling them that there was no additional funds to distribute and it all needed to go back into the business. And, they might have had a rough year or whatever it might have been. And the sisters kept seeing their brother with like a brand new truck, his house being renovated. Then he was building a new house. And they're just like, there's something that's not computing here. And they kept asking for financials. And they said, don't we as owners have a legal right to know what's actually going on in the company? And isn't it important for us to be aware? And because the father and the son were like super busy, heads down, working really hard, he was getting bonuses because he was making great deals that were building the equity in the company. There were all kinds of reasons for why what they were seeing externally was happening. But because there was no transparency, they assumed the worst. And that happens a lot. If you don't share the information and you have good reasons for maybe why you don't want to, or it's just like too much trouble because there's so many other things going on and you just need to trust us. Family members that don't have that information and are getting a little like questioning, they will always assume the worst. It's just the way our brains work. Like that void gets filled with, I don't know, like worst case scenarios. And so they ended up getting legal support and taking their dad and their brother to court. And it was just ugly. And it just really wrecked their family relationships as well. And it could have been handled really easily by just having really good, clear standards around what was shared and when and how, and then sharing the actual information that would have them know why it needed to be done this way. And that's just another example of how you can have your standards for transparency and communication within your family governance that really takes care of the potential for the presumptions that can happen when there's a void of information. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of great examples. So why don't we talk a little bit more about what can build and what can damage
Let me
sincerity in a family?
Yeah, let me see if I can.
And these are all things that we talk about in much greater depth in the book. So we're just kind of skimming over the top of this at this point.
Yeah, let's see if I can do here we go. So that's the slide we were just on. Play from the current slide. There we go. So the next one is, how do you build sincerity in a family system? So it's built with, we just talked about it, transparency, clear and consistent communication, honesty and integrity, where you really bring the values into what it is that you are doing and deciding. And there is that sense of, yeah, I can trust that what our family stands for, what we say we care about, is actually translated in what we do. There's a real sincerity in that. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think these are the fundamental pieces of it. Absolutely. Honesty, as you defined earlier, I think is important in the sense that it means that you don't have a different conversation going on in your mind than the one that you're having externally with me. They should match pretty darn closely. That's kind of how I like to talk about honesty, because it's very clear what that looks like. And integrity is walking your talk for sure. It is also acting, so meaning what you say, saying what you mean, and of course acting in concert with that, acting congruently with that.
Yeah, and I'll add too, in terms of families, you and I write quite a bit about this, and both utilize this concept in family systems. That there's often a tendency to uh, operate from cordial hypocrisy, or artificial harmony, right? Where we kind of say things to go along to get along. It's not worth it to actually feel what we're actually thinking or feeling, because it's not going to go over well, or somebody's always going to have a reaction. It's like we have, I like to use the idea of like those invisible fences that dogs have. They have like a shock collar on, and you don't have to have a physical object of offense, but if they get too close to a certain area, they get a little shock. And in families, we learn over time what's okay to go, or where you don't want to go. You don't want to go there. And sometimes that can get more and more narrow over time, or we're seeing a lot in terms of polarization that's happening with politics and religion and different orientations to how to think about how we should be with each other. And the values within families can be fracturing too, in terms of people. So then it becomes, different belief systems can make it so that there's very narrow areas to be honest with each other, and then there's this like honest agreement to not go there. And that's where a lot of mischief can happen in families, because um, there might be side conversations where people are able to say what they really think and feel, but not to the face of somebody. And when it comes to money, that can get dicey, in terms of, well, we'll just tell them this so that we don't have to deal with their conflict, but we're actually going to go here and do this anyway, or behind their back. And that leads to what we would say, how sincerity, if you don't have it, insincerity can break trust in families. So you want to say a little bit about how it's broken?
Well, yeah, dishonesty, that's a good one. When people are dishonest and then they get found out, their lies are uncovered, that will certainly break a sense of trust in the domain of sincerity, betrayals of all kinds. But in terms of money, the betrayals tend to be around, well, what we call financial infidelity. That is, um, doing things behind someone else's back financially, um, with the intention of keeping it, again, secret. Um, Going back on one's word, so saying, yeah, I'll do this, but then not doing it and not having a good, a conversation beforehand about why I'm not going to do it. Yes, I know I committed to, I don't know, uh, co-signing a loan on a car for you, my son, but I decided not to do it. But I don't give a good reason for that. So there needs to be something besides just that's the way it is. Continually changing the goalposts. So if we have like something that we've talked about is, actually, Emily, why don't you talk about this one, because this is
Sure.
something.
Yeah, this happens a lot in family businesses, where there's this desire for engagement and building leadership within the next generation. And so they're given opportunities and maybe a project to do, or maybe some sort of responsibility. And then as they're moving towards what they think is the goalpost of this particular project, somehow it changes, it gets moved. They never actually end up getting to reach a place of proving themselves, or showing up as consistently being able to have a leadership role, because it's always like, well, yeah, but there's also this you need to do, or there's this you need to do. So that having clear milestones that don't move is really important. And when you continually make promises and say, oh, yeah, you're going to have this, or this is going to happen when you're working here, and then it changes, you can come across as not being sincere about what it is that you're actually promising or wanting in terms of the next gen and their development. And that can cause them to be pretty disheartened or disengaged, if there's not a clear sense of a pathway to follow.
And the last one here, saying different things to different people, happens in all kinds of contexts, not just families, but it's can be very difficult when in a family setting, when I say something to, especially in a family business setting, but even just in a family in general, I say something to one family member that I basically make a commitment of some kind or talk about something that's a value of mine. And then I change my mind about that. But I don't go back to that first person that I was talking to and say, hey, I've changed my mind about that. I maybe later talk to somebody else and explain my new way of thinking, but I don't even talk about it as a new way of thinking. I just talk about it as this is how I'm thinking. And those other two people get together and they have very different experiences of what I said. They begin to distrust my sincerity. So, one of the things that's important in all of that is to make sure if you change your mind, if you change your direction, if you change your thinking about something, go back to the first person you spoke to, or whoever, wherever you spoke to people about whatever that was, and just bring them up to speed. I've changed my mind, and this is why. This is what's going forward, so that you don't end up in a situation where they think that you are being highly insincere, or were being highly insincere, or you were lying essentially to them. So,
and again,
those are some of the. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, if you don't do that, then they're going to presume the worst, even if you had the best intentions. So because
Yeah.
we will presume that wow, you deliberately lied. It's just the way we're wired. So
Yeah. So those are just a few of the things, and of course, in the book, we go into depth on these things and more.
Yeah.
But do you want to just bring us to the last slide, Emily, and we'll
Sure. So
talk to that.
if you're interested in learning more about the book, we have some free materials that you can get as well, for how to talk about family purpose, how to talk about your wishes, to be sincere about what you really want for the family, and to there's also a trust governance audit you can do to see like where we're pretty solid as a family in terms of those 4 domains, and where might we need some shoring up. So those are some helpful things to consider. And then if you wanted to get in touch with us, we're here very active on LinkedIn, and then also we have consulting and work that we do with families in all kinds of ways, and businesses, family offices, family foundations. Yeah.
So that actually brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for those of you who are still on, who stayed on and waited. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back next month. Next month we'll focus on one of the other 4 assessment domains of trust, take a deeper dive into that and how it relates to families. Let's see.
And please send us, direct message us any questions you have, any comments, any topics that you'd want us to cover in the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Charles.
Thank you, Emily.